I always believed that royal love was unshakable, that no matter what life threw our way, the foundation my wife and I built would stand strong. I told myself that trust wasn't something fragile, that it wasn't something that could crumble overnight. But I was wrong, so very painfully wrong. It didn't happen in slow motion. There were no warning signs I had ignored, no gut feeling that told me to brace for impact. It was like stepping into an ice-cold river, expecting solid ground beneath my feet, only to realize too late that there was nothing but an abyss below. That night, I had everything a man could want. A home filled with memories, a wife I adored, a routine that had become so familiar, so comforting, that I never questioned it. And then, in the span of a few hours, it all disintegrated. Started with a phone call. I was in my car, stuck in traffic, coming home later than usual from a long day at work. My phone buzzed on the dashboard, and I glanced at the screen. Dale, one of my oldest friends, a guy I hadn't spoken to in months. I answered, expecting small talk, maybe an invitation to grab a beer. What I got instead was a single sentence that changed my life. "Harlan, I need to tell you something. It's about Marjorie." There was something in his voice, something strained. My hands tightened on the wheel as my mind scrambled to make sense of it. "She's at the Wexley Hotel, room 214. I almost laughed. My wife at a hotel on a Wednesday night? It didn't make sense. She was supposed to be at home. She had told me she was feeling under the weather, that she was going to bed early. "I didn't want to be the one to tell you," Dale continued, "but you need to see it for yourself." I don't remember the rest of the drive. I must have broken every speed limit in the city. My thoughts were a hurricane of denial and dread. There had to be some explanation, a mistake, a misunderstanding. But as I pulled into the hotel parking lot, my stomach clenched. Marjorie's car was there, parked in the far corner, half hidden in the shadows. My hands trembled as I stepped out of my car. The cool night air bit at my skin, but I barely felt it. My heartbeat thundered in my ears. I don't know what I expected to find. I don't know if I was ready for the truth. But I went inside, and I walked toward room 214. And the moment I opened that door, my world shattered. I stood outside room 214, my pulse hammering in my ears so loudly it drowned out every rational thought. My fingers hovered over the door handle, cold sweat trickling down my back. My body already knew the truth, even if my mind refused to accept it. I wanted to turn away, to leave, to drive home and pretend I never got that call. But the part of me that had loved Marjorie for 2 decades, the part that had trusted her with my entire soul, needed to see it for myself. The door wasn't locked. That should have been my first sign. It was slightly ajar, as if whoever was inside was too caught up in what they were doing to care about privacy. My stomach twisted violently. I pushed the door open just enough to see inside, and that's when my world caved in. The room smelled of expensive cologne and wine, mixed with the lingering heat of something more intimate. The lamp on the nightstand cast a dim, golden glow over the tangled sheets of the bed. And there, at the center of it all, was my wife, Marjorie, wrapped around another man like she belonged to him. Time didn't stop. It didn't slow down like in the movies, giving me a chance to process the betrayal in agonizing detail. It was fast, brutal, like a gunshot to the chest. The man, some younger, fitter guy I didn't recognize, froze the moment he saw me. Marjorie, on the other hand, took a few seconds longer to react. Maybe she was too caught up in the moment. Maybe she thought she was still dreaming. But when her eyes finally met mine, they widened in pure, unfiltered horror. I didn't shout. I didn't throw punches. I didn't even move. I just stood there, gripping the door frame so tightly my knuckles turned white, trying to breathe past the burning sensation in my lungs. "Harlan," Marjorie scrambled to grab the sheets, her voice shaking. This isn't what it looks like." I almost laughed. That old cliché. That's all she had. 20 years of marriage, and that was the best she could come up with. My throat was dry when I finally managed to speak. "Then what is it, Marjorie?" My own voice sounded foreign, hollow. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks exactly like what it is." She opened her mouth, then shut it. She knew there was no excuse, no lie that could smooth this over. And then, for reasons I still can't comprehend, she started crying. Not tears of regret, not tears of someone who had just been caught committing the ultimate betrayal. No, these were tears of frustration, of inconvenience, as if I had just walked in and ruined her perfect little moment. And that was what broke me. I turned and walked out. I didn't run. I didn't slam the door. I just walked, my entire body numb. The hallway blurred around me. The walls, the lights, the faint sound of distant conversations. It all faded into the background. I stepped into the elevator and pressed the button for the lobby, my hands trembling so hard I could barely make a fist. By the time I made it outside, the night air hit me like a slap. The cold was sharp, but it wasn't enough to wake me up from the nightmare I had just stepped into. Marjorie, my Marjorie, the woman who held my hand through my father's funeral, the woman who stayed up all night with me when I was sick, the woman I had shared a life with for 2 decades. She had thrown it all away. And for what? A cheap thrill? A man whose name she probably barely even knew? I got into my car, gripping the steering wheel like it was the only thing anchoring me to reality. My wedding ring caught the dim glow of the streetlights, and suddenly it felt like a handcuff. I yanked it off and tossed it onto the dashboard, my chest heaving. I could have gone home. I could have gone to a bar. Instead, I just sat there, staring at the dashboard, trying to make sense of something that would never make sense. My phone buzzed in my pocket, snapping me out of my daze. I pulled it out, and sure enough, Marjorie's name was flashing across the screen. I ignored it. A second later, another text. Harlan, please talk to me. Let me explain. Explain? Explain what? How do you explain 20 years of trust being obliterated in an instant? How do you explain the fact that I had been home alone that night, thinking about what to cook for dinner, while she was tangled up in another man's arms? I exhaled slowly, willing myself to think clearly, but the more I thought, the worse it got. I had spent 2 decades believing in a love that never truly existed, and now I had no idea what came next. I sat in my car for what felt like hours, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles ached. My mind was a battlefield, thoughts clashing violently against each other. One part of me wanted to drive home, lock the door, and pretend none of this had happened. Another part of me wanted to storm back into that hotel, drag Marjorie out, and demand an explanation, though I knew deep down that nothing she could say would undo what I had just seen. The phone buzzed again, another message from her. I refused to look at it. I knew if I read her words, it would only enrage me further. I needed space, needed to breathe, but even the air around me felt suffocating. My entire world had just been turned upside down, and yet here she was, still trying to talk her way out of it. I clenched my jaw so tightly it hurt. The betrayal burned inside me, but beneath the rage, beneath the shock, was something far worse. A hollow, gaping emptiness. 20 years. That's how long I had been blind. I had spent half my life with a woman I no longer recognized, and if I was honest with myself, I didn't know if I ever truly knew her at all. I needed answers, but I wasn't about to get them from Marjorie. Not now, not like this. I turned the key in the ignition, the engine roaring to life, and pulled out of the hotel parking lot. But I didn't drive home. Couldn't. Home wasn't home anymore. Instead, I found myself heading toward the one place that had always felt like a safe haven. My sister's house. By the time I arrived, it was past midnight. The neighborhood was quiet, every house dark except for one. The porch light of my sister's home cast a warm glow on the pavement. I sat in the car for a moment, staring at the familiar door, my hands still shaking. I hadn't planned on coming here, but something inside me had pulled me in this direction. Maybe I just needed to be somewhere where the walls weren't tainted by Marjorie's lies. I knocked once, twice, and before I could knock a third time, the door swung open. Iris stood there, wrapped in a blanket, her dark eyes narrowing in confusion. "Harlan?" she said, rubbing sleep from her face. "What are you?" She stopped mid-sentence, taking one look at me and frowning. What happened? I opened my mouth, but no words came out. How was I supposed to say it? How was I supposed to put this into words? She didn't wait for an answer. Without hesitation, she stepped aside, letting me in. The warmth of the house hit me instantly, contrasting the icy numbness inside me. I had always been close with Iris, closer than most siblings usually were. She was younger than me by 6 years, but she had this way of seeing through people, of knowing when something wasn't right. She didn't push me to speak. Instead, she walked to the kitchen, poured me a glass of water, and set it on the table in front of me before sitting down across from me. "Tell me," she said softly. And just like that, the dam broke. I told her everything. The call from Dale, the hotel, the door, the sheets, the look on Marjorie's face when she saw me standing there. I spoke like a man possessed, the words spilling out of me faster than I could control. And Iris, she just listened. When I finally stopped, the room fell into silence. Then she exhaled slowly, her fingers tightening around the mug in front of her. "I always knew she was selfish," she murmured. "But I didn't think she was this cruel." I blinked at her. "What?" She hesitated for only a second before shaking her head. "I never wanted to say anything, Harlan. I thought you were happy, and I didn't want to be the person who planted doubt in your mind. But Marjorie, she always had this way of making everything about her. I saw it over the years, but you never did. Or maybe you didn't want to." A fresh wave of nausea rolled through me. Had I been blind all along? Had everyone seen what I refused to acknowledge? I ran a hand down my face, exhaustion settling into my bones. "I don't know what to do, Iris. I don't know where to go from here." She leaned forward, her gaze steady. "You don't talk to her tonight. Don't give her the satisfaction of spinning some story. She's going to try to manipulate you, twist this into something that somehow makes you the bad guy. Don't let her." I nodded numbly. She was right. I had known Marjorie long enough to know that she was already crafting a defense, preparing to shift the blame onto me, onto anything other than herself. But the truth was undeniable. She had betrayed me, and no matter what she said, no matter how many times she tried to reach out, I would never look at her the same way again. The night stretched on, but for the first time in hours, I felt a sliver of clarity. I wasn't alone in this. I wasn't crazy for feeling like my entire world had been upended. Iris watched me for a moment before speaking again. "You should sleep here tonight," she said. "You're in no shape to go home." Home. The word left a bitter taste in my mouth, because my home no longer existed. I nodded, too drained to argue. Iris disappeared into the hallway, and a few minutes later, she came back with a blanket and a pillow, setting them on the couch. "Get some rest," she murmured. But as I lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, sleep refused to come. Because Marjorie's betrayal wasn't the end of the story. It was just the beginning. I barely slept. I lay on my sister's couch, staring at the dark ceiling, listening to the faint hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak of the house settling. My body was exhausted, my mind battered, yet sleep never came. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Marjorie. Her startled expression, the way she fumbled to cover herself, the way her lips parted as if she actually thought she could explain away what she'd done. But the worst part wasn't the betrayal itself. It was the realization that I didn't know who I'd been married to for the last 20 years. I kept going over everything in my head, dissecting our life together, searching for signs I had missed. Had she always been this way? Had she been unfaithful before? Had our entire marriage been a lie? Or was it just this moment that had shattered it all? I thought of our anniversary trips, the quiet Sunday mornings, the nights we lay in bed whispering about the future. Were those memories tainted now? Was any of it real? At some point, I must have dozed off because the next thing I knew, I was waking up to the smell of coffee. My neck ached from sleeping on the couch, my thoughts still tangled in the fog of disbelief. I sat up slowly, running a hand down my face, trying to shake the heaviness from my chest. Iris was already in the kitchen, pouring a second cup of coffee, her expression unreadable. She slid the mug across the table toward me before leaning against the counter with her arms crossed. "You look like hell," she said bluntly. I let out a dry chuckle, though there was no humor in it. "Feel like it too." She didn't say anything for a long moment, just studied me, waiting. She knew I wasn't the type to spill my feelings easily, but after last night, there was no point in pretending everything was fine. I took a sip of coffee, the bitterness jolting me fully awake. I don't know what to do, I admitted. I don't even know where to start. Iris sighed and pulled out the chair across from me. You have a few choices, Harlan. You can confront her, let her talk, but that's just going to be her trying to manipulate the situation. You can go straight to a lawyer, get your ducks in a row before she has the chance to twist things. Or, she hesitated, choosing her words carefully, you can take some time to figure out what you really want. What I wanted. That was the problem. I wanted my old life back, the life I thought I had. I wanted to wake up and realize this was some cruel, elaborate dream. But that wasn't reality. Reality was that my wife had cheated on me in a cheap hotel room, and I had no idea why. The sharp buzz of my phone cut through my thoughts. I pulled it out of my pocket, my stomach twisting when I saw Marjorie's name. Missed calls, texts, a voicemail. I hadn't checked any of them, hadn't been ready. But now I had to know. I unlocked my phone and clicked on her latest message. Harlan, please talk to me. I know you're hurt, but this isn't what you think. I need to explain. Please come home. Not what I think. I almost laughed. I saw her. I saw the truth with my own eyes, and yet she still thought she could twist the narrative. I glanced up at Iris, who was watching me carefully. She wants me to come home. Iris scoffed. Of course she does. She wants to control how this plays out, wants to make sure she can spin it in a way that benefits her. I clenched my jaw. She was right. Marjorie was desperate to regain control of the situation, and if I walked into that house, I'd be walking into her version of events. I needed to approach this differently. I clicked on the voicemail next. Marjorie's voice came through, shaky but measured, like she had rehearsed what she was going to say. Harlan, I don't know if you're listening to this, but please just hear me out. I know you're angry, and you have every right to be, but things aren't as simple as they seem. I didn't plan for this to happen. I never wanted to hurt you. Things got complicated. You and I, we haven't been us for a long time, and I think you know that. I don't want to do this over the phone. Please come home. Let's talk. We owe each other that much, don't we? I stared at my phone, my pulse hammering against my skull. We haven't been us. That was her excuse. Instead of owning up to her actions, she was trying to rewrite history, as if I had somehow driven her into another man's bed. Iris must have seen the rage building in my expression, because she reached across the table and grabbed my wrist. Breathe, Harlan. You don't have to respond. You don't owe her anything right now. I forced myself to inhale deeply. I wasn't going to play into her hands. I wasn't going to let her guilt trip me into believing that this was my fault. Iris leaned forward. You should go to the house, but not to talk. Go to get your things. See how she reacts when she realizes she's not in control anymore. A slow, bitter smile crept onto my face. You know what? You're right. If she thinks she can manipulate me into listening to whatever excuse she's cooked up, she's in for a surprise. Iris nodded approvingly. And Harlan? Don't let her see you break. I downed the rest of my coffee and stood. I won't. But as I got into my car, my hands still trembled, because for all my anger, for all my resolve, there was still one undeniable truth that I couldn't escape. No matter what happened next, I would never be the same man again. The drive back to the house felt surreal. Every streetlight, every passing car, every familiar landmark blurred into the background as I gripped the steering wheel. My mind was a battlefield of emotions, torn between anger, disbelief, and the deep, aching sadness of realizing that my marriage, 20 years of my life, had been an illusion. I had replayed Marjorie's voicemail in my head a dozen times. The way her voice shook, the way she framed her words, twisting reality to suit her needs. Things aren't as simple as they seem. I didn't plan for this to happen. We haven't been us for a long time. Each sentence was a carefully crafted attempt to make her betrayal seem inevitable, as if it had been some slow decay instead of a deliberate, selfish decision. And maybe, in some ways, our marriage had been cracking under the surface, but I hadn't been the one who gave up. I hadn't been the one who chose to throw away 20 years for a fleeting moment with another man. As I pulled into the driveway, the house looked the same as it always had. Calm, still unassuming. It was strange how a place could hold so many memories and yet feel completely foreign at the same time. The porch light was on, casting a faint glow against the dark night. My stomach twisted as I stepped out of the car, feeling like an intruder in my own life. The front door opened before I even had the chance to knock. There she was, Marjorie. Her face was pale, her eyes puffy, like she had spent the night crying. But I had known her long enough to recognize the difference between real grief and regret for being caught. This wasn't the face of a woman devastated by her own actions. This was the face of someone scrambling for control. "Harlan," she breathed, taking a small step forward. "Thank God. I was so worried about you." I didn't respond right away. I just stared at her, taking in the sight of the woman I had once loved with every fiber of my being. The woman who had shared my bed, my dreams, my life. And now I didn't even recognize her. "I came to get my things," I said, my voice steady, betraying none of the storm raging inside me. Her expression flickered, just for a moment, a crack in her carefully composed mask. She hadn't expected that. She had expected a fight, a confrontation, an opening where she could manipulate the situation. But I wasn't going to give her that. "Harlan, please," she said, her voice trembling just enough to sound convincing. "Can we talk first? Just sit down with me for a minute. Let me explain." I let out a slow breath through my nose. "Explain what, exactly? That you lied? That you betrayed me? That while I was at home thinking everything was fine, you were at a hotel room with another man?" She winced at my words, but I wasn't going to soften them for her. Not anymore. "It's not that simple," she insisted, shaking her head. "I never meant to hurt you." I let out a humorless chuckle. "You didn't mean to hurt me? You made a choice, Marjorie. A choice that you knew would destroy everything we built. And now you want to act like this just happened." She swallowed hard, her eyes darting around like she was trying to find the right words. "I was lonely," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "We've been distant, Harlan. You have to see that. I needed to feel wanted again." There it was, the justification, the attempt to shift some of the blame onto me, as if my lack of attention had somehow forced her into someone else's bed. I stared at her, feeling a cold detachment settle over me. "Do you hear yourself? Do you hear how selfish that sounds? You felt lonely, so instead of talking to me, instead of trying to fix whatever was wrong, you decided to cheat. That was your solution." She bit her lip, and for the first time, I saw something real flicker in her eyes. Not love, not guilt, but fear. Fear of what came next. Fear of losing the life she had taken for granted. "Harlan, please," she whispered. "We can work through this. I love you." My chest tightened. She loved me. The words felt hollow, meaningless. Once, those words had been my anchor. Now, they were nothing more than a desperate plea from a woman who was watching her carefully built world crumble. I took a step back. "Love? You don't get to use that word. Love isn't just saying it, Marjorie. Love is choosing someone every single day. And you," I exhaled sharply, shaking my head. "You made your choice." Tears welled in her eyes, and for a moment, I thought she was going to reach for me, but she didn't. She just stood there, shoulders slumped, defeated. I didn't say another word. I walked past her into the house, the familiar scent of our home wrapping around me like a cruel reminder of what I had lost. I moved through the rooms, grabbing my belongings, stuffing them into a bag without care. I didn't need much, just enough to leave, just enough to get away from this place that had once been my sanctuary but now felt like a graveyard. As I walked back toward the door, Marjorie stood frozen in the hallway, watching me with wide, desperate eyes. "So that's it," she whispered. "You're just leaving?" I paused, gripping the door handle. I turned to face her one last time, searching for anything that might make this hurt less. But there was nothing. No trace of the woman I had fallen in love with, just a stranger wearing her face. "I don't know who you are anymore," I said quietly. And I'm not going to spend another 20 years pretending I do. With that, I stepped outside, closing the door behind me. And for the first time since that phone call, I finally felt free. But deep down, I knew this wasn't the end. Not even close. I drove away from the house, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. The echoes of Marjorie's pleading voice still rattled in my skull like a relentless storm that wouldn't pass. We can fix this. I love you. We haven't been us for a long time. Lies, excuses, desperation. But none of it changed the simple truth. I had walked away. I had left behind the life I spent 2 decades building, and now I had no idea what came next. The night swallowed the road ahead, the streetlights blurring into streaks of orange as I sped toward nowhere in particular. The weight of everything pressed against my chest, heavy and suffocating. I had done the right thing, I knew I had, but knowing didn't stop the pain from sinking its claws into me. Knowing didn't erase the memories, the anniversaries, the laughter, the nights spent whispering about the future. I found myself pulling into an empty parking lot near the waterfront, killing the engine. The silence that followed was deafening. I let my head rest against the steering wheel, inhaling deeply, trying to force some clarity into my thoughts. But there was none, only a question that gnawed at the edges of my mind. Had she ever truly loved me? Had our marriage been a slow death from the beginning? Had I been fooling myself for years, thinking we were solid when, in reality, she had already been slipping away? The betrayal wasn't just about what she had done in that hotel room. It was about every moment that had led to it. Every time she looked me in the eye and said, "I love you," when maybe, just maybe, she didn't. A knock on the car window jolted me from my thoughts. My head snapped up, my pulse spiking. A man stood outside, peering in through the glass, someone I hadn't seen in years. Dale. The friend who had called me, the one who had told me where to find my wife. I rolled down the window, my voice coming out rough. "What the hell are you doing here?" He gave me a look, one that said he knew exactly what I was going through. "I figured you'd end up somewhere like this." He motioned toward the passenger seat. "Mind if I get in?" I hesitated for a moment before nodding. Dale climbed in, exhaling sharply as he leaned back. "So," he said after a beat, "did you do it? Did you walk away?" I ran a hand through my hair, letting out a dry laugh. "Yeah, I did." He nodded like he had expected that. "Good." That surprised me. I turned to him, frowning. "Good? You sound like you saw this coming." Dale sighed, rubbing his jaw. "I did, Harlan. Maybe not the way it actually happened, but man, I've known you a long time, and I've watched the way she treats you, the way she's always taking you for granted. You didn't see it because you didn't want to, but I did." His words hit me like a punch to the gut. "Why the hell didn't you say anything?" He gave me a sad smile. "Would you have believed me?" I opened my mouth to argue, but the truth settled over me like a weight. No, I wouldn't have. I would have defended Marjorie. I would have brushed it off, called it paranoia, because I had wanted to believe in her. I leaned back in my seat, staring at the dashboard. "I don't know what to do now, Dale." He shrugged. "You start over. You figure out who you were without her." That sounded simple, but the reality was anything but. I had spent 20 years as Marjorie's husband. That was my identity. I didn't know who I was outside of that. Didn't know how to move forward when my entire future had been ripped out from under me. Dale seemed to read my mind. "Look, you don't have to figure it all out tonight. But one thing's for sure. You can't let her pull you back in." I scoffed. "Already trying." He raised an eyebrow. "How?" I pulled out my phone and showed him the unread messages. More texts, more voicemails, more attempts to reel me back in. Dale let out a low whistle. "She's panicking." I nodded. She didn't expect me to leave. She thought I'd stick around, let her explain, maybe even forgive her. "Would you have?" The question made my stomach churn. "A few hours ago? Maybe. Maybe if she had looked me in the eye and told me the truth instead of scrambling for excuses. But now, after hearing her try to shift the blame, try to justify what she did, "No," I said firmly. "I wouldn't." Dale nodded approvingly. "Then don't respond. Let her sit in it." Let her realize she lost you. I stared at my phone for a long moment before doing exactly that. I powered it down. For the first time in hours, I felt the smallest fraction of control return to me. Dale clapped a hand on my shoulder. You need a place to crash? I shook my head. I'm staying at Iris's. He chuckled. Good. She won't let you do anything stupid. I smirked. Like go back to Marjorie? Exactly. We sat in silence for a while, the weight of everything still pressing against me, but not as suffocating as before. For the first time since this nightmare started, I realized something. I was free. I didn't know what came next, I didn't have all the answers, but I wasn't trapped anymore. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough for now. The night air was crisp as I sat in my car, the hum of passing traffic in the distance barely registering in my mind. Everything still felt surreal, like I was watching my own life unfold from the outside. Even after talking with Dale, even after making the decision to walk away from Marjorie, the weight of 20 years didn't just disappear overnight. I had driven aimlessly for an hour after leaving Dale, passing familiar streets, old landmarks, places that held pieces of my past. The coffee shop where Marjorie and I had spent our early mornings before work. The park where we used to walk hand in hand, dreaming about a future we never truly had. The little diner where we celebrated small victories, where she laughed at my terrible jokes and made me believe we were invincible. Now, those places felt haunted, tainted. They weren't symbols of love anymore. They were reminders of my blindness. I had spent 2 decades believing I knew my wife, believing we were partners, equals. But now, in the cold silence of my car, I saw the cracks I had ignored for years. The way she had slowly withdrawn, the little lies that I had dismissed, the distance that I had chalked up to stress or routine. I had been blind because I had wanted to be. With a deep sigh, I finally turned the car toward my sister Iris's house. It wasn't home, but it was safe, and right now that was all I could ask for. I pulled into Iris's driveway, shutting off the engine and sitting there for a moment. The weight of exhaustion pulled at my body, but I knew sleep wouldn't come easy. My mind was still too loud, too tangled in what-ifs and should-haves. The front door creaked open before I even reached the steps. Iris stood in the doorway, arms crossed, her expression softer than earlier. She didn't say anything, just stepped aside to let me in. I walked past her, dropping my bag by the couch, rubbing the tension from my temples. The house smelled like lavender and something warm, probably the tea she had waiting on the kitchen counter. She finally spoke, her voice quiet. Did you see her? I exhaled through my nose. Yeah. I turned to face her, leaning against the counter. She tried to spin it, tried to say we hadn't been as, for a long time, that she was lonely. The words tasted bitter as I said them. Like that justifies what she did. Iris's expression hardened. Of course she did. She knows she screwed up, so now she's trying to make you feel responsible for her choices. I nodded, rubbing my jaw. I didn't let her. I told her I wasn't staying, took what I needed, and left. She studied me for a long moment before sighing. You did the right thing. I let out a dry laugh. Then why doesn't it feel like it? Iris stepped closer, her gaze steady. Because you spent 20 years loving someone who didn't deserve it. That kind of betrayal doesn't just go away in a night, Harlan. I swallowed the lump in my throat, looking away. I just don't know who I am without her. Iris placed a hand on my shoulder, squeezing gently. Then it's time to find out. Sleep came in restless waves, broken by flashes of memories I couldn't escape. Marjorie's smile on our wedding day, the way she used to fall asleep on my chest, the sound of her laugh when she was truly happy, the way her face had looked in that hotel room when she realized she had been caught. When morning finally arrived, I forced myself out of bed, moving on autopilot. The house was quiet, sunlight spilling through the curtains, painting the walls in soft gold. For a brief moment, I could almost pretend everything was normal. But then reality set in. I wasn't waking up in my own bed. I wasn't waking up next to my wife. I was waking up in my sister's house, starting a life I never planned for. I sat at the kitchen table, sipping the coffee Iris had left for me, staring at my phone. I had turned it off the night before, unwilling to deal with Marjorie's desperate messages. But now, curiosity got the better of me. I powered it on, and immediately the notifications flooded in. Missed calls 13. Voicemails 5. Unread messages 21. I hesitated for only a moment before opening the first text. Marjorie. Harlan, please just talk to me. I scrolled down. Marjorie. I know you're hurt, but we can fix this. Please come home. Marjorie. I can't believe you're ignoring me after everything we've been through. After 20 years. I clenched my jaw. She still didn't get it. I opened the voicemails, pressing play on the first one. Her voice was shaky, but not with guilt, with frustration. Harlan, I don't understand why you won't just talk to me. We owe each other that much, don't we? I made a mistake, but that doesn't erase what we have. Please come home. I deleted it. The second one was similar, more pleading, more manipulation. I deleted that one too. The third voicemail, though, this one was different. Harlan, I don't know what you're trying to prove by ignoring me, but this is childish. You're being dramatic. We're adults, we can work through this. But if you think walking away is going to make me the bad guy, you're wrong. I'm not going to let you just abandon our marriage like this. I stared at the phone, my pulse thrumming in my ears. Abandon? I was the one abandoning our marriage? I was the one being dramatic? My grip tightened around the phone, a wave of cold fury washing over me. She wasn't apologizing. She wasn't acknowledging what she had done. She was angry because she wasn't getting her way. That was all I needed to hear. I blocked her number, and just like that, a weight lifted. It wasn't over yet. There was still the matter of divorce, of untangling 20 years of life together. But for the first time since that phone call from Dale, I felt like I had taken a step forward. I wasn't looking back anymore. I was done. And Marjorie, she was finally going to feel what it was like to be left behind. For the first time in what felt like forever, I woke up feeling light. There was no immediate pressure on my chest, no sickening weight of betrayal twisting my stomach. The moment I opened my eyes, the world didn't feel like it was crumbling anymore. It wasn't perfect, not by a long shot, but it was mine again. It had been 2 weeks since I blocked Marjorie's number, 2 weeks since I had last heard her voice. I hadn't responded to her emails, hadn't acknowledged the messages she left through mutual friends, and I had ignored every attempt she made to run into me at places she knew I used to go. She was spiraling, desperate to regain control over a situation she had lost the moment I walked out that door. But the truth was, I didn't care anymore. In those 2 weeks, I had started rebuilding myself. It wasn't easy. 20 years is a long time to untangle from someone, but I wasn't doing it alone. Iris had been my rock, reminding me every day that this wasn't the end, just the beginning of something new. Dale, too, had stuck around, making sure I didn't drown in my own thoughts. And somewhere along the way, I had started living again. I had moved into my own place, a small apartment, nothing fancy, but mine. A space that didn't smell like Marjorie's perfume, that didn't have echoes of our past in every corner. I had started going to the gym again, rediscovering the parts of myself I had neglected. I had even reconnected with an old hobby, photography, something I hadn't touched in years because Marjorie always made me feel like it was a waste of time. And today was a good day. I sat at a cafe, sipping my coffee, watching the world go by. The sun was shining, the air was crisp, and for the first time, I wasn't looking backward. My phone buzzed on the table, and I glanced at the screen. Not Marjorie. Instead, it was a text from a number I had saved just a few days ago. Hey Harlan, hope your morning's going well. Let me know if you're still up for that walk later. A slow smile crept across my face. Her name was Lena. We had met at the gym, an easy conversation that turned into a few shared coffee breaks, then a genuine friendship. She wasn't a distraction. She wasn't some rebound. She was simply someone who didn't know me as Marjorie's husband, and that alone felt like freedom. I took a deep breath, staring at the message for a moment before replying. Wouldn't miss it. See you at 3. As I put my phone down, I realized something. I had survived. I had walked through the fire, through the betrayal, through the darkest moments of my life, and I had come out the other side stronger. Marjorie had destroyed our marriage, but she hadn't destroyed me. She was my past, and now I was finally ready for my future.